Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Luis Pereira da Silva, the Deputy General Manager of the Bank for International Settlements, and it is my pleasure to chair this panel in the Finance in Common event on how to make the most of public development banks. Very important and timely subject. It is my pleasure to have here as a panelist Jutta Urpilainen, who is the Commissioner for International Partnerships at the European Commission. Hello, Jutta. To have also Rosa Maria Sanchez Yebra Alonso, Vice-Governor, Council of Europe Development Bank. Hello, Rosa. And
Hello.
to have also Luki Afilman, the Director General of Budget and Risk Management at the Ministry of Finance in Indonesia. Good evening, Luki.
Good morning.
And last but not least, to have also Gunther Braunig, the Chief Executive Officer at KfW. We will have a session of about 45 minutes, and we will start with a generic question for each of you. Of course, I think we all understand that public development banks have been a very important actor to address major development challenges globally, but also regionally. They are key actors to the achievement of the SDGs, and I'm sure that we all understand that they can be a very powerful instrument to address some of the burning issues related to climate change and how to mitigate the risks associated with that. When we speak of public development banks, comes to mind the fact that they are powerful instruments that can help the other macroeconomic policies that have been activated to fight climate change, such as the elements of monetary and prudential policies that some jurisdictions are using, but also, of course, some of the instruments that have been used by fiscal policies in many governments. So perhaps I would start with each of the panelists about their views on this question of how they think public development banks, perhaps using their own experience, can be helpful in this in the current circumstances, what they can bring to the issue of achieving at the same time SDGs, but also contributing to fight climate change. Perhaps I could start with Jutta to express her views on this question in an intervention, Jutta, of about 2 to 3 minutes. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Let me start by expressing my appreciation for being part of this historical gathering of public development banks. I think it marks an important moment in our joint efforts for the global recovery, like you just described. I am delighted to take part in this panel as the EU strongly believes in a close collaboration with public development banks. Even before the pandemic hit, the EU had started encouraging development-sensitive investment. The EU External Investment Plan encourages public and private investors to bring more investment into Africa and EU neighboring countries. and in doing so, to help those countries generate jobs, boost economies, and offer people a brighter future. Through the financial arm of the plan, the European Fund for Sustainable Development, we provide financing for development projects and programs through guarantees and blending projects, in addition to the EU's development cooperation and budget support. And this has helped us be reactive when the COVID-19 crisis started. Working together as the Team Europe, the EU, member states, but also financial institutions, we have, for example, very quickly mobilized almost 36 billion euros to respond to the COVID-19 crisis in our partner countries. As part of this, the EU reoriented all guarantees to counter the consequences of the pandemic and to come out of the crisis with green, digital, equal and resilient recovery. So through these agreements, our partner financial institutions can now use these guarantees to generate billions of euros in much needed investment across Africa and the EU neighborhood. They will directly support people who face several challenges because of the COVID-19, whether small businesses owners or self-employed, women entrepreneurs, or businesses led by young people. So in fact, today, I am very pleased to announce the conclusion of 10 new guarantee agreements with partners for investments in Africa and EU neighborhood countries. By concluding these milestone guarantee agreements today and finalizing the implementation of the external investment plan, Team Europe is continuing to lead the global response to COVID-19. So we definitely must build back better and stronger future together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jutta. Rosa Maria, can you add also from your perspective, your views on the important role of public development banks at this particular juncture?
Yes, well, good morning. I'm also delighted to be part of this session, which is very relevant for the CEB, since the CEB is a European Development Bank with a social mandate, strengthening social cohesion in Europe with a special focus on integrating the most vulnerable population. The bank operates in 42 European countries. To fulfill this mandate, the bank finances projects with a high social value, integrating climate change considerations and environmental sustainability in all our activities. The crisis has showed that the current economic model has produced unbalanced growth, widening inequalities and negative environmental impacts. And in particular, it has showed the lack of resilience of the health, education and other social sectors due to a persistent underinvestment in social infrastructure. The CEB has responded in a record time to the crisis, supporting its member countries, continuing providing healthcare services and the continuation of jobs and businesses. We have adapted our lending instruments and put in place a fast-track procedure to approve COVID-related loans worth 3.6 billion euros in scarcely 2-3 months, which is an impressive task compared to a total volume of 4 billion euros in a normal year. This shows the capacity of the CEB or the NDBs and all PDBs in general to react and mobilize funds in emergency situations. But beyond responding to emergency situations, as important as this is, we see ourselves playing a counter-cyclical role in supporting the road to a resilient, sustainable and inclusive recovery, addressing the social inequalities that have unemployment at the center, the investment gap in social infrastructure and the environmental challenges. We think that PDBs should act as catalyzers of transformational and impact investment, and striving for a development model more around human well-being, health, social inclusion, and the preservation of the planet. At CB, I stand ready to partner with our member countries, local actors, and all stakeholders to prepare and to enhance the long-term resilience of our societies in the long term. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Rosa Maria. Let's turn to maybe Lucky, because you are now in a different time zone, and of course you have an Asian experience, and of course you are in the Ministry of Finance, which sometimes oversees the activities of development banks. So from your perspective, both from someone who oversees and also from Asia, what could you sort of bring as a message where there is this cooperation and there is this need for development institutions to act on SDGs and climate change?
Thank you, Luis. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for having me on this very prestigious panel. So maybe perhaps representing the other side of table, not only we are also client or user of these PDBs actually. So we know due to the pandemic COVID-19, many things have been changing. People, businesses, economies, all levels, domestic, local, regional, global, have to adapt with this new situation and challenges that is unprecedented and unpredictable. So the million-dollar question to all of us is it a new normal? What will stay? What will change when the pandemic is over? I think the concern should also apply to PDB, public development banks. I still firmly believe that PDB still play and will play a critical role in facilitating governments around the world to address various shared concerns and to achieve universal goals such as poverty, inequality, prosperity, and of course, sustainability. However, urgencies, challenges might have to be adjusted. And as usual, later on, execution, delivery will even be more challenging. Dealing with this pandemic COVID-19, governments around the world, including in Asia, have to make extraordinary and breakthrough decisions and policies in the context of substance as well as speed, while at the same time still respecting aspect of accountability, governance, as well as sustainability. And for fiscal policies, this is very obvious because of this lockdown, social distancing policy, revenue collection has been going down significantly. And on the other side, the expenditure side, our spending has been increased, again, quite significantly. Or in short, that all of a sudden, that we have these financing needs all of a sudden increase significantly. And we as government have to be creative, innovative in fulfilling these additional huge financing needs. And of course, one potential source coming from PDBs. And we are very thankful. We have very good and exclusive relationship with our development partners, both multilateral, bilateral agencies. What I'm trying to say here, that this good relationship that is based on trust and mutual benefit principles is even more useful during the economic hardship like we have now. So we have good support as well as flexibility that we need during this pandemic COVID-19. And going forward, for us, the issues of sustainability and climate change remain priority. That is something that PDB should be working more seriously and extensively. But the question that is still relevant, what I explained before, is how PDBs, how public development banks achieve those goals in new normal, in the post-pandemic era. That is something that we should be discussing in more extensively in the next couple of minutes here. Back to you, Luis.
Thank you, Luki. Let me turn now to Gunther, and of course we know the importance of development agencies. We know the history of KfW. So Gunther, on this front, and given what Lucky just said, the need to sort of act fast against pandemics, of course, globally, regionally, what sort of perspective could you bring to the usefulness of the role of development agencies and also development banks in reaching the SDGs, but also fighting COVID and fighting climate change?
Well, thank you, Luis. Definitely, this year is a Corona year, and it illustrates how effective public development banks can be in policy reaction with respect to Corona. When you take the case of KfW, we have been tripling our lending volume in Germany because we are part of an important set of measures of the German government to fight the economic consequences of Corona. So one key element for our success has been that I think the very quick response of the national governments together with the EU Commission with respect to the temporary framework on state aid, and also our digital infrastructure with the German commercial banks to put our lending programs into action. And we have been providing liquidity to more than 90,000 corporates in Germany. On top of that, we have been running a 5 billion euro program for developing countries to help them in the Corona crisis. But as Lucky said, the big question is what is going to be the new normal when we have hopefully fought successfully the Corona crisis? And I believe then the question of sustainable finance, where we have traditionally been very active, is coming back to force. The question of the carbon neutrality journey that we're all embarking on will be more visible, and this is going to be the new normal, and I think it's going to be the new normal until 2050. So thank you. Back to you, Luis.
Thank you, Gunther. Let me perhaps speak on your last point, which is the need to consider precisely some of these longer-term goals that are associated with a new normal that would sort of make the world a more sustainable place in terms of marching towards carbon neutrality and fighting climate change. So, of course, we know that there are short-term instruments, macroeconomic policies that can be mobilized. But there is a need to think of in a longer-term horizon. And that's perhaps where public institutions can have this longer-term horizon to finance and to think about the initiatives that will be more effective. Is there a sort of a way where this, for example, can be thought with your experience in the public sector, in public development institutions? And do you see a need, for example, to combine, of course, these longer-term approach, this capacity to mobilize long and medium-term finance to green financing instruments, and at the same time coordinating with other actors, which seems to be also a useful tool to address these global issues? So let me see if one of you perhaps want to start this part of the conversation. Perhaps Gunther yourself or Jutta?
Just very quickly, Luis, two points here. One is our initiative, which we call the Clean Ocean Initiative. We put together in 2018, together with European Investment Bank and Agence Française de Développement, in order to finance long-term projects, in order to avoid waste getting into the oceans. So very concrete joint initiative of important public development banks and Cassa Depositi and also ECO joined into this initiative, which has already brought together 1.3 billion in projects so far. But also, I think the financial sector as a whole has a big role to play in this carbon neutrality action. The way how financial flows get into green investments is going to be very important going forward. And I think public development banks are pioneers in the area of sustainable finance. They have a lot of technical expertise, at least at KfW we have that, and we can bring this technical expertise into the discussion to formulate definitions on green finance, and this should be taken into account.
Of course. Thank you, Gunther. So if I look at your term, green finance comes immediately to mind the initiatives that we are seeing emerging in Europe in terms of a green new deal, initiatives to finance the transitions towards a carbon neutral society. Jutta, do you want to say something about that and how this is shaping up, and perhaps also later, Rosa Maria, about how do you see this from your perspective of a financial institution? Perhaps starting with Jutta?
Yes, thank you. I think it's very easy to agree with the previous speakers that it's crucial for all of us, and of course of our future generations, to adopt a sustainable growth model that is green, digital, socially just, and resilient. And from the European Union perspective, of course, we see the public development banks as a key partners in this approach. And in order to release global recovery, will be fundamental for public development banks and all actors to have a clear mandates, strategies, and targets to commit politically to environmental, financial, and socially sustainable solutions. By partnering with and making the most of public development banks' full range of capacities, the EU, so the European Union, can fully support partner countries in the implementation of their national determined contributions, so NDCs, and long-term strategies aligned with the Paris Agreement and the SDGs. However, the large-scale deployment of sustainable solutions will not materialize quickly unless public development banks are fully committed to help closing the financing gap. So I still want to underline how important I see the role as the role of the public development banks. So this is true for sustainable investment, including in areas such as human development, social inclusion, and sustainable health systems. My personal concern, and maybe I will share it with you in this occasion, my personal concern is that how strongly the international community is still committed to sustainable development goals. I think it will be the huge question after the COVID-19 crisis, that is there still a strong commitment to achieve those goals by the year 2030? I personally hope that there is this commitment, but we then, of course, need to understand that it does mean that we also need to increase the funding for our partner countries in order to help them to achieve those goals. And of course, also from that perspective, I see the public development bank's role very important. But this is my comment, and unfortunately, I need to very soon leave another event, but it was a great honor to participate in this panel. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your contribution, Jutta. Let me perhaps turn now to Rosa Maria, see a bit of her perspective, but I would like also after that to hear from let's say, a more developing country perspective, and I will ask Luki to chip in. And since I am also originally also from an emerging market, I might also have my own views on that. So Rosa Maria, on this idea that Jutta just mentioned, what would be your take?
Yeah, thank you. Well, from the perspective of a social bank, we of course think that this is a decisive decade to invest in the 2030 agenda. SDGs provide the right roadmap for a sustainable development, and as such should be guiding investment decisions. And they are perfectly compatible with the Paris Agreement goals. So from this perspective, we think that SDGs and the green transition goals need to be integrated in the PDBs strategic and operational frameworks, and they should be addressed green and social issues at the same level in an integrated manner. Within PDBs should prioritize those projects with a high development impact, both social and environmental, and they should be more impact focused. Impact should matter more than volume. At CB, for example, we have identified 10 key SDGs that are more in line, more relevant to our mandate and lines of action, and we have integrated them in our operational framework so that we will be able to assess our contribution in achieving these SDGs from the project appraisal point of view and then at portfolio level. Also, we think that PDBs have a responsibility and the capacity to set standards on public goals, on global public goals, and hence pave the way for the private sector to follow suit. On the governance issue, we think that their governance should be strengthened, not only to ensure a higher development impact, but also greater accountability and greater transparency, and of course the highest standards in reporting and disclosure practices. And in this respect, this includes taking into account the recently approved green taxonomy and supporting the development of social taxonomy in the future. To fulfill their ambitious mandate, we think that PDBs should have to be adequately capitalized and empowered to develop innovative financial solutions, from guarantee schemes, crowding in the private sector, and assuming more risk wherever necessary. And this is more the case for social banks that are meant to address market failures in the social sector. And finally, we think that the mandates of PDBs should build on our complementarities to achieve the highest development impact possible, and also incentivize smart partnerships to greater alignment in achieving common goals. This is my contribution here. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosa Maria. So I do understand that, yes, there is a need to have a reflection on the special nature of development institutions and those who have social goals in terms of their structure, their mandates. But perhaps coming back to the point that was mentioned about setting targets and commitments to SDGs and also targets to fight climate change, and turning now to perhaps a developing country perspective. Look, me and you, we come from emerging markets, and we know that there could be, of course, commitments, but there is always the difficulty to finance some of the actions that are necessary to transition from a high carbon economy towards a lower carbon economy. And this financing is sometimes more difficult to mobilize, even if, and I will turn back to Gunther in a while, advanced economies development agencies can certainly contribute for financing this transition. What are your thoughts about the need to reconcile commitments to local goals, to global goals, and at the same time the availability of resources to finance the transition and to combat climate change and achieve SDGs in your region, for example, in Asia?
Thank you, Luis. First of all, Indonesia is very committed to green development, this climate change, SDG, sustainable development. We have ratified Paris Agreement in 2016 and submitted our NDC, nationally determined contribution, with quite ambitious target. But as you mentioned, in achieving those goals, that there are always two sides of coins. The first side is talking about what to do. We're talking about programs. We're talking about projects. And to pursue this greener development, for example, we know in most cases that needs better technology, more advanced technology, which is in turn perhaps is quite costly. So that's why the other side of coin, talking about financing, it also become more and more important. So for Indonesia, the concrete example, we have issued for the first time what's so-called Global Green Sukuk back in 2018. And this is the third year already. So we always issue every year, so the third time. And so far, the total amount has been issued for this Global Green Sukuk has reached about 2.75 billion US dollar. This is the first sovereign green sukuk in the world. So this is Indonesia becomes what's so-called pioneer for this sovereign green sukuk. Indonesia has received also consent for funding proposal amounting around 103 million US dollar from GCF as part of the RED Plus scheme. So, however, from our experience, that I think we as community, as the ecosystem, we have to design a system in such a way that can provide some incentive for countries, for corporations to issue more and more, let's say, these thematic bonds like green bond, blue bonds, or sustainability bonds. Okay, so again, to be frank, from our experience, 3 issuances of this Global Green Sukuk, to be honest, first, yes, we are able to attract, to diversify, to broaden our investor base, in this case, attracting green investors. So for example, in terms of statistic, we are able to attract 34% of total green investor for our this sukuk, green sukuk. However, the second part is talking about, is there any pricing benefit? That's so far that we haven't seen it yet. Okay, so again, this is very straightforward question, that if we want to attract, if we want to invite more and more issuers, corporation, sovereign, to issue these thematic bonds, I think investors should be able to provide more incentive / reward for them, so that they can also, they are attracted to issue this kind of thematic bond, alternative financing schemes. That's from me, Luis.
Thank you, Luki. From what you were saying and some of the other interventions, I see a sort of a convergence of course, commitments to achieving SDGs and to be much more aware of the importance of fighting climate change, while at the same time there is innovations in the financial industry towards the new types of instruments that can finance the transition, such as green bonds. The willingness, as Gunther and Jutta, and also to some extent Rosa Maria was pointing out, to mobilize additional resources for that. So, and at the same time, the willingness of some private investors to consider these new instruments. should you sort of, if we combine all this, see that there is a sort of implicit coordination of goodwill that is beginning to take place, and should we sort of proceed in this coordination with, let's sort of a dialogue between all the actors that are stakeholders in terms of achieving SDGs and fighting climate change, and it's the public sector, the private sector, civil society, development agencies. How would you sort of, this forum is actually a very important initiative in that sense. Would you say that this coordination is beginning to take place and should proceed?
Yes.
Who wants
Yes.
to sort of chip in? Gunther, maybe you want to say
Louis,
something about that?
First of all, I don't know whether Jutta is still with us, but I wanted to say we are really committed to the SDGs. Already we can map our entire portfolio to the 17 SDGs, and this has been one important milestone for us. When it comes to our cooperation with developing countries, we are always discussing with our partners in order to identify projects that can lead a country into that transition to carbon neutral. For example, projects for renewable energies is one of our fields we are very active, I think also in Indonesia, by the way. And also to your third point, Luis, what is the private sector doing? And we're getting more and more calls from sustainability funds where capital wants to invest in sustainable projects. And they ask us, the public development banks, to show us projects where they can invest together with us. And I see an important role of the public development banks in identifying, spearheading those projects in order to bring the whole financial sector into this sustainable development journey. And I think the interest of the capital markets is already there through green bonds, green loans, but also through funds that are more and more being formed in order to bring capital into more sustainable projects. So I'm very positive on that, and I think, as I said, public development banks have a mission here to play and to fulfill in order to get this private capital into the transitional projects. Back to you, Luis.
Thank you. Thank you, Gunther. We have unfortunately only 4 or 5 minutes left, and I would like to take this opportunity to relay some questions that we have received from the audience, and perhaps one important one is, of course, what is the biggest challenge that you can see for the public development banks? I think you have answered a little bit of that, but perhaps just as a final round, if there is one thing that we need to consider, either Rosa Maria, Luki, or Gunther, what would be this biggest challenge that you see? Let's perhaps start with Luki.
Okay,
So
going forward,
yeah, go ahead.
Going forward, as I said, both are important, both sides in terms of what to do. We're talking about programs and projects and about how to finance it. But I would like to highlight about the going forward about these public development banks. So again, this is my experience dealing with the public development banks. I think the key success of this public development bank dealing with their clients, their customers, right, is getting the ownership. I think that's kind of very important because in the sense you are dealing with one country, and within one country there are a lot of many, for example, ministries. Some projects are located in, let's say, in remote area, so we have to deal with these local governments. And those local governments, for example,
The other
homework
panelists hear
together.
me.
So I think this is our homework together. So I am from Ministry of Finance. Okay, this is from central government. But even in my job here, that try to coordinate, try to convince, and that's the key. As I said, key is to get the ownership of the project, this sustainable project, this green project, is key of the success of getting the project done. Okay, and this is the homework for all of us, the job of for all of us, the public development banks, the donors, as well as we at the government. And we're talking about many factions in government, ministries, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Public Works, Ministry of Energy, and as I said, local governments, municipalities, and there are so many parties involved that should be on board with this mission,
Okay.
which is not
you.
easy.
Thank you very much, Luki. Maybe Gunther, I think on the same line, biggest challenge.
Biggest challenge, you have the NGOs and very ambitious plans from politics, from the EU Commission on the one hand, and our job is to make it practically work. And therefore it's important that everybody listen to each other, also to the practical issues in terms of regulation, and really means to bring sustainability to work. And here there needs, we need to talk to each other, to listen to each other. Our job is to really to get the execution done from very ambitious plans to really results. And this is the biggest
the local results. Thanks a lot. And Rosa Maria, you have the final word. You mentioned the need to consider the social dimension of all this. So please.
Yes, indeed. Well, from the perspective of a social bank, we think that social issues have to be integrated in the strategies of all PDBs, being green, being social, being general. We think that, well, PDBs in general should need more coordination to build on the complementarities, as I said, and also we have a very important role to play to crowding private sector funds to very specific projects with a high social impact and green impact that otherwise will not be possible. We have also a responsibility at local level, since more of the strain on the public finances are felt at local level because the municipalities are the ones that have to cater for the provision of basic social services that are under strain for migration flows, for the sanitary crisis. So we have a very important role to play and fill in the gap at the municipal level. All in all, to sum up, I would say that social and green have to go together in the strategies of PDBs, and we have to set the standards for the private sector to also come along for a sustainable development model.
Thank you very, very much, Rosa Maria. Well, look, we said the key words, I mean, participation, coordination, ownership, concern with social dimensions of all these policies, of course, achieving the SDGs and fighting climate change with an important role for public development banks. I would like to thank you for your participation in this panel, and thank for the organizers for having this very rich discussion. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Luis. Goodbye, Rosa. Goodbye,
Thank you, Luis. Bye.
Bye.
Good to see you.
Good afternoon from Jakarta. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.